Hello, my friends. Welcome to another exciting one. Today, we are going to learn how to render this beautiful soft body animation from scratch. Without much talks, open up your blender and let's get blending. So, as usual, we're going to start everything from scratch. So, let's go to our general to get our fresh blender scene. So, I'm using the latest version of Blender, but any version you have, you'll be able to follow along as well. So let's hit on general to get our fresh blender scene. So first, let's select our light and then our cube, and then let's sacrifice our cube. So let's hit on X to delete our cube and our light from the scene. So next, let's add in our reference image as usual. So let's hit on X to go to our right photographic view, and then let's hit on Shift plus A, image, then reference. And then let's quickly locate where we save our reference image. So by the way, I'm going to leave a link to the project files, everything you need to follow along in the description below. But then the final project files is going to be on my Patreon. So please check it out in case you want to support this channel to grow. So I'll select my reference image and then I'll hit on open to add it to our scene. So with our reference image added to our scene, first let's check this. And then let's check this so that we will not be able to accidentally move our reference image. Then next, let's hit on data properties, and then let's first make it opaque. So let's check this opacity, and then let's decrease it a little bit. Then let's make sure the depth is always in front so that our reference image is always in front of our model. Then next, let's uncheck the perspective so that when we go out into a perspective view, we'll not be distracted by our reference image. But then when we jump into our orthographic view, our reference image is going to show. So once we have our reference image in place and everything ready to go, first let's start by modeling the bottom part. So with the bottom part, we are going to use a cylinder. So first let's do Shift plus A, mesh, and then let's add in a cylinder. Right. So once we have the cylinder inside, let's pop this open. Make sure our vertices is set to 32. That's fine. Let's decrease the radius to, let's say, something like 0.5. And then let's decrease the depth a little bit to make it a little bit shorter, like this. So once we have this in place, let's hit on G, Z, and then let's bring it down in position like this, right? So as we can see, our reference image have some round bevels like this. Let's see how we can add that. So with this selected, let's hit on tab to jump into edit mode. Make sure we have our edge mode active, and then we can do alt click on this edge here to select this entire edge. So once we have this entire edge selected, we can do Control plus B to add in a bevel. Let's scroll our mouse wheel up to create more roundness or more cuts into our bevel. So let's just bring our bevel up. Now let's scroll our mouse wheel up a little bit like this to create some cuts here. Now let's jump into our reference, so to the right of the orthographic view, so that we can see what we have. So I think it looks nice and simple. So next, let me hide this cylinder. If you take a look at our reference image, you can see we have a little bit of detail here. Let's see how we can create that, right? So let me bring my reference image. Let me bring my cylinder back. Let's just rename it to bottom cap, just for identification purposes. Bottom cap like this, right? So that it doesn't get missing in our scene. So once we do that, now let's hit on Control plus R to add in a loop cut. Let's scroll our mouse wheel up like this. Then let's add in some loop cuts like this. So I added 5 level of loop cuts, but then any level of loop cuts you add will do the trick. So once we have this added, next let's select this entire faces. So I'll start from here. Make sure I have my face select mode active. Start from here. 2, 3, 4. Right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So let's select this entire faces here, and then we are going to use this to create our detail. Right. So once we have this selected, first we can do I to insert in our face like this. Then we can do I once again to create another insertion like this. So once we have the second insertion, we can come to this place and then decrease the depth so that we bring it inside a little bit, right? So this is what we have so far. Now if we bring this depth of the insertion inside, you can see it brings our insertion inside a little bit. So basically this is what we want. And then next we can hit on S to scale it out like this. So if you tab out of edit mode, this is what we've created so far. Next, let's add in some subdivision surface to see what we have. But before we do that, let's just hit on 3, select this, and then hit on X to delete faces, right? So once we have this, tab out of edit mode, and let's add in our subdivision surface like this. And then right click and then let's shade it smooth, right? So once we shade it smooth, this is what we have. We have our nice detail here. If this look a little bit fainted, you can go back into your edit mode, Ctrl+R, and then add one loop cut here to tighten things up a little, right? So that to make everything tight and then prominent. I think this looks nice. Next, let's create. So if you go back to our reference image, you can see we have some cutout here. Let's see how we can create that as well. So let me go back, tab into edit mode, and then let's hold Alt click to select this loop. So we are going to use this loop to create that cutout, right? So first we have to do Control B to bevel this loop to create, make sure we have 2 bevel like this to create this bevel nicely like this. So once we have this bevel, we can do I to insert the bevel, right? We've inserted it, and then we can do I to create another insertion like this, right? And then we can decrease the depth to bring that insertion inside like this. Tab out of edit mode, and then this is what we have, right? If this seems a little bit bigger, you can always go back I to add in an insertion like this. Then maybe I to add one more, and then let's bring the depth inside like this. Then hit on tab. I think this looks a little bit better than the first one. So next, let's just alt click to select this loop here, E to extrude, S to scale it down, then E, Z to extrude and bring it up like this, right? Let's do Control R to add in a loop cut here just to tighten up this corner like this. So I think we are done with the bottom part. So let's see how we can create this top part of our tube. So to do this, we are going to use a cylinder. So let's make sure we're on an X photographic view, and then our reference image is seen. Then we can do Shift+A, mesh, and then let's add in a cylinder, right? So once we have the cylinder added, first let's decrease the vertices from 32 to 16. I think 32 is too much, so let's go with 16. And then we can bring it down, G. Then let's position it down until we have something like this. And then we can jump into our edit mode. So let me hit on tab to go back into our edit mode. Alt click, you select this loop here. I'm going to my Z once again. Then we can do G, Z to bring it up. So we are somewhere here. Then we can scale it on the Y axis. So let's do S, and then let's hit on Y to scale it only on the Y axis until we have something like this, right? So if we go into our perspective view, this is what we have so far. So once we scale it on the Y axis, now let's scale it on the X axis. So we can hit on S, X to scale it on the X axis like this, right? So next, let's see how we have to make this part. You see this part is a little bit crooked. Let's see how we can make it straight. So we make this part straight and then make this part straight. So there's actually 2 ways of doing it. There's the faster way and then there's the slow way. So the slow way will be Shift Alt clicking to select this entire loop here without selecting this last 2. So this one and then this one. And then we can scale it on the X axis. So we can do S, S, and then 0 to scale it on the X axis to make everything straight. Right, to make everything straight, and then we can do the same for the other side. Or we can, there's another cool way of doing it by using the loop tools add-on, which is free with Blender. So I hold on Alt click to select this, Alt Control click to select this entire loop here, then right click loop tools, and then I'll go with G stretch, right? So make sure you have your loop tools active. Go to your edit, preference, add-ons, and then search add-ons. Then you search for your loop tools, and then make sure you have it checked so that you'll be able to use it. So once you have your loop tools checked, just right click loop tools, G stretch, and then click on it. Then you have your straightened up lines like this, nice and beautiful. So once we have the line straightened up, you can go to our face select mode, click to select this face, and then we can do E to extrude it up nicely like this, right, to create this part here. So once we do that, maybe we can scale it down a little bit. Oh, I think it looks nice and beautiful. So next, let's add in some loop cuts in the middle. We're almost done with our tube. Let's tab out of edit mode, hit on slash to, let's select our tube, hit on slash to isolate it, and then this is what we have. Next, let's see how this tube will look if we put it into a subdivision surface to make everything smooth. I'll go to my modifiers tab, generate, and then I'll locate my subdivision surface, and then this is what we have. It's looking a little bit ugly. Let's see how we can make it look nice. So with this active, we have the level set to 1, which is fine for now. We're going to increase it later on if we want. So with this active, let's hit on tab to go into our edit mode. And then let's add in a couple of loop cuts to tighten everything up, to make everything look nice. So first, once we are in edit mode, we don't want to see the effect of our subdivision surface. So to hide our subdivision surface in our edit mode, let's just check here on this icon here, which said display modifiers in edit mode. So once we uncheck it, if we are in our edit mode, our subdivision will be hidden. But if we jump out of edit mode, our subdivision is going to be shown. So once we are in edit mode, I can hold on alt click, make sure we have our edge select mode active, alt click to select this entire loop at the bottom, and then we can do Ctrl+P to add in a bevel. Scroll your mouse wheel up maybe 2 times to create a nice bevel like this. You can see it's holding our form nicely. Right click, then let's shade it smooth. Then let's add in a couple of loop cuts in the middle. So tab edit mode, Ctrl R, and then let's add in like 5 loop cuts like this to hold everything down nicely. So once we have those loop cuts in, let's tab into edit mode, and then let's edit, alt click to select this, and then maybe we can scale it on the x-axis a little bit. So hit on X to scale it on the x-axis, X to scale it on the x-axis a little bit, X scale it on the x-axis. Then maybe do this for this one as well, to maybe add in, it's looking a little bit weird at the side, so let's go back a little, S and then X, only x-axis. Yeah, let's do this. Yeah, the same thing here, S X, yeah, S x-axis. Yeah, so that everything is looking nice and beautiful. So now let's hit on slash to bring back everything, and then I think everything is looking nicely. So let's go to X to go to our right orthographic view. Then let's hide our cylinder. So let's just name it body. So let's hide our body. And then if you take a look at our reference image, you can see we have some nice detailing on the top here. Let's see how we can create that. So let's bring our body back. Let's tab out of edit mode. So if we tab out of edit mode, this is what we have. Let's see how we can straighten this part, and then we can create that detail later. So let's tab into edit mode. Let's add in some loop cuts, Ctrl R. Let's add in 1 loop cut here, and then let's bring it out. We have something like this. Let's go to our face select mode, select this face here, and then we can do I to insert it inside a little bit like this. Tab out of edit mode, and then we have this part solved nice and sharp. So next, let's see how we can create that details at the top here. We're going to use a cube, so let's do Shift A, mesh, and then let's add in a cube at the middle. Let's do GZ to bring the cube up, then let's scale it down. Let's scale it down to something like this. Then let's scale it on the x-axis. Then let's nice and thin like this. And then once we have this, we can scale it on the y-axis like this, right? So once we have this, let's add in some loop cuts, and then let's add in some extrusion. So do Control R, loop cut. Let's scroll our mouse wheel up to add in some loop cuts here, right? So once we have the number of loop cuts, mine is set to 30, which is fine. Go to your face select mode, and then let's select every other face. So let's do alt. Let's make sure our hand is set on shift. Then let's just click on to select every other face like this. Then we are going to do the same thing at the back. Then once you are done, we will just add extrusion to it. Once we have everything selected, we can do Alt plus E, extrude faces along normals. Then we can add in our extrusion to it like this. So once we have our extrusion set, we can add in our subdivision. So go to our generate subdivision surface, and then this is what we have. Tab into edit mode, and let's add in a loop cut, one loop cut at the middle. And we can do Control plus B to create a bevel like this. Tab out of edit mode, and then this is what we have. Let's right click and then shade it smooth. Then our detail is nicely created for us. Maybe you can do S to scale it a little bit outside on the y-axis like this, right? So let's just name this top detail, right? So once we have everything nicely modeled, now let's see how we can add in our materials. So before we go further, let's select everything and then let's orient it to the main body. So I'm going to drag to select everything, or shift click to make sure our main body is active, and then we can do Control plus P and then parent to this. So now once we move this body, everything is going to move along with it. Now next, let's see how we can add in our materials. So to add in our materials, let's drag this up here, and then let's change this to our shader editor. Change this from object to world, and then let's add in an HDRI into our scene. So let's select the background, and then we hit on Control plus T to bring an environment texture mapping, which is placed into the generated, right? If this doesn't happen, unless it means you have your node wrangler add-on off. So just go to get extension, get add-ons, and then search for node wrangler, and then make sure you have it active. So once you do that, you'll be able to do this. Control plus T, select the background, and then hit on Control plus T to add in these nodes. So once you have these nodes added, let's just hit on open. I'll locate where I saved my HDRIs. So HDRIs are free of charge. You can get some for free online. Just Google for HDRI, just download them, unpack them, and then just locate where you saved them, and then just add in any HDRI will do. So I'll just select one and then hit on open image to add it into our scene. So once I have my HDRI added into our scene, let's go to our render properties, change this from EV to cycles, and then I'm using a laptop with RCS GPU, so I'm just going to change this device from CPU to GPU compute, and then I'll hit on this to show my render view. So this is what we have. So this image that you see at the back is the HDRI we added. So if I just change the HDRI, you can see the image will change as well. So the HDRI doesn't really matter for now. We just need some lighting into our scene. So let's just hide this image for now. So in my render properties, you can see we have film. So let's toggle the film down, and then let's check on transparency to hide our HDRI from our scene, right? So once you have it hidden from our scene, now let's see how we can UV unwrap this image, add in some material, and then all that cool stuff. So now let's select this body here, and let's go to our UV editing tab. No, before you do that, let's just select this body here, and then let's add on a label onto it. So with this body selected, let's go to object. So so I will be able to edit the material of this object. Then let's hit on new to add in a new material. So it will be principal BSDF will be added for us. So let's select this, and we can hit on Ctrl+T to add in an image texture onto this label, right? So I'll hit on open, and then I'll locate where inside the project file you'll find this label here. There's a PSD file. I'll just locate it, and then I'll hit on open image to add it into our scene. So you can see it's added into our scene. Right, it's looking some way. It's looking weird. So let's see how we can correct that. Right. So with this added into our scene, let's go to our UV editing tab, and then from here I'll change this to the look dev mode so that I can see what we are doing. And then select this, hit on L to select everything, and then this is what we have. Right, so once we have everything selected, you can hit on U. I think it's already unwrapped for us because we used a cylinder as the main object. But in case it's not, you can hit on U, then hit on unwrap to unwrap it once again. So once we have everything unwrapped, we don't need these two islands here. So we are going to select them and then scale them to make them very, very small and tiny. So first, let's make sure we have a UV select mode active, and then we can click on it, select this, shift click on this to select these two, then hit on S to scale it down, and then G to position it somewhere here, right? So once we are done with that, we can then select this one, and then let's rotate it. So we can hit on R, then we can rotate it -90 like this, right? So once we have it rotated, we can do G and then bring it in place like this. Then we can scale it up to position it in place like this, nicely like this. So you can see it's been affected here. We want it to come to this side, so we can do G, just drag, so we have it in scene like this. It's looking nice. So next, let's go to our layout so that we can see what we have. So this what we have so far. Beautiful. Next, let's do the same thing for this one. So with this selected, then we select, hold shift and then select this. We are going to use the same material, so we can do Ctrl+L, and then we can do link material to link these two materials. And then let's select this. Let's go to our UV editing tab once again, and then let's select this unwrapped UV for us. Then we can do S to scale it down, and then we'll just rotate it to this side, scale it down, rotate it, and then bring it to this side like this. So that, just make sure you have everything selected. Scale it, make it very, very small, very, very tiny. Then we can position it to somewhere here so that we have everything having the same color like this. So now we can go back to our layout, and this is what we have, right? So now we can just decrease the roughness a little bit to make it a little bit shiny like this. It's looking nice and beautiful. I think this looks nice. Then next, finally, let's add in some material to this part. So let's select it, hit on new. This is going to give it maybe a darker color like this, and then decrease the roughness a little bit to make this shiny as well. So at this point, let's just quickly save our file. So Ctrl S, and let's save it as tube, and let's hit save to save our file. So basically that's it for our tube. Now let's focus on adding the soft body, and then maybe finally do the animation. So I'll go back to my solid shading view so that we can see what we have done so far. Let's see how we can add in our soft body animation. So once we have everything set, we need 2 extra objects to be able to do a soft body simulation. So first we need the sphere, and then next we need the collider body, which we are going to use alongside the sphere to create the animation, right? So to create our sphere, we are going to use a round cube, operator. So let's do Shift A, mesh, then we select our round cube. In case you don't have this, you have to check, go to your preference, extensions, and then search for extra mesh. Make sure you have it installed, or extra mesh. Make sure you have it installed. So once you have it installed, if you do Shift A, mesh, you'll be able to see your round cube. So let's hit on round cube to select a round cube. So once we have this round cube here, let me just bring this down. Let's make sure we change this operator from round cube to quad sphere, right? So let's select one quad sphere, then we have our quad sphere. So let's just decrease the number of arcs a little bit to 6. I think 6 is fine. Then let's hit on G, and let's position it somewhere here in place. We are going to come back to this later, but this is the first part of our simulation. So once we have the quad sphere, let's just right click, shade it smooth, and then Ctrl+1 to add in a subdivision level of 1. Right, we are going to come back to this later. Let's just rename it to bubble. Right, we are going to come back to it later. So next, let's create an object which we are going to use to collide with this bubble. So we just have to make sure we create an object, a low poly version of this entire thing. Then we are going to use that as the collider object. So let's select the body, and let's say Shift+D to create a duplicate, right? So once we have the duplicate, let's just rename it to collider. Whatever you rename it doesn't really matter, but we just need an object. So once we have it renamed to collider, let's go to our object data properties, viewport display, and then let's display as wire, right? So that we can see what we have. So once we have it displayed as wire, we are going to make it as low poly as possible. So let's hit on slash, and then right click, hit on tab to go into edit mode. I'll go to my face select mode, select this face here, right? So we're going to delete it. We're going to delete this face, the next face, till we get here. So once you have the face selected, you can go to your select and then more, and then we can add more, which is Ctrl+ numpad. So I'll do until I have up to this side selected. Then we can do X and then delete faces to delete this face here. So once you have that face selected, deleted, you can alt click to select this entire loop here. Hit my slash to bring back everything. Then I can do E to extrude it down until I have it covering this entire model. So once it gets to this side, we can hit on F to fill it up. Go to our subdivision surface, hit on X to delete it from our scene. Then we have something like this, right? So if I go to my object data and then change it to solid, this is what we have so far. But then we are going to change it to wire. Then make sure the collider is not going to render. So we are going to check this camera to disable it from our render view, right? So this is what we have so far. Can even get away with the some subdivision, but I think this is fine. This will work fine for us, right? So next, let's see how we can add in our Softbody simulation. It's going to be as simple as possible. So once I have this here, I'll go to my physics properties, and then I'll add in a soft body physics, right? So once we have this soft body added, let me quickly change this to our timeline. Then let's hit on play, and then you can see our cube is just bouncing up and down, which means it's working correctly. So now let's uncheck the goal here. Let's go back, and then let's hit on play once again to see what we have. So let's hit on play. Then you can see our cube is falling down into the oblivion. Now let's, with the cube selected, to make sure it's not falling down, let's go to our field weight, and then let's remove gravity from the equation. So let's select the gravity and then hit on 0, and then hit on enter to move the gravity. Now if we hit on play, you can see our cube is at one position. Nice. So next, let's select our collider, and then let's add in collision like this. So let's leave everything at default. It's fine, right? So now Once we have this, and then we have the collision, these two are going to interfere with each other. But then how are we going to be able to attract this ball to the collider body? We are going to use a force field to do that. So let's add in a force field. So let's do Shift plus A. Then let's go to our force field, and then let's add in a force field right at the middle. So I'll hit on force field, then we add a force field at the middle. Now if we hit on play, you can see our soft body is going away from our force field, our cube, instead of coming to it, right? So unless we change the strength of our force field to a negative number. So now with the strength selected, I'll select it and then I'll do -1 to change it to a negative number. At this point, please save your blend file, else if Blender crashes on you, it's not my fault. So I'll just do Ctrl+S to save my blend file, and then we can hit on play, and then now you can see our soft body is being attracted to our force field, and then it's colliding with our collider body lines like this. So this is what we want. So let's go back once again, then let's see how we can add in some stiffness to make it bubbly. As you can see, it's squashing totally. So let's just maintain some bubbles. So to do that, select our cube, our sphere, then let's go to our where is it, our edges, and then let's add in some bending. So let's add in some bending of 3, and then let's hit on play to see what we have, right? So as you can see, nicely, it's affecting nicely. So let's go back, and then let's just add in stiffness, then let's hit on play to see what we have, right? Yeah, it's looking nice and beautiful. So maybe we can decrease the stiffness a little bit, then we can see what we have. Yeah, I think this looks nice. So this is what we are going for, right? So once we have this, the whole setup ready to go, next all we need to do is to create duplicate of this sphere, decrease the size, just to vary the sizes a little bit, and then maybe we can finally add in our lighting, and then we can finally render our animation. So next, with everything set, let's do Shift+D to create a duplicate. Maybe increase the size, position it randomly somewhere. Shift-D, duplicate, scale, Shift-D, duplicate, scale, Shift-D, create a duplicate, Shift-G, Shift-D, create another duplicate, scale, just scale them, Shift-D, maybe make this smaller. So just play here with it till you find something that works for you. It's totally up to you. Shift-D, I think it's fine for me. Now let's hit on play to see what we have. Right. So this is what we want, but then there's one big flaw. If I pause it, you can see everything is intersecting with each other, but that's not what we want. We want each of them to collide with each other as well. So let's just go back, and then let's make sure we select all the bubbles, so we have everything selected, and then we can hold on Alt and then click to add in a collider body collision. I'm not sure whether this is going to affect everything, but let's just cross check and see. Right, yeah, so everything now has a collision, right? So make sure you select everything, and then you just hit on Alt and then click on collision, and then collision will be added to everything like that. So once we have that, or you can just do it one by one, select this, add a collision, select this, add a collision, just anyhow you do it, select everything, Alt click to add a collision. So once I do that, we can now hit on play, Shift S to save my, Control S to save my file, and then I hit on play to see the results we have now. Right. So now all the bubbles are colliding with each other as well. Then they are bouncing off each other as well. But as you can see, it's a little bit intensive on my PC. That's why it's going slowly like that. But I hope you get the point, right? Yeah. Nice and beautiful. So I'm just going to pause it here. Go back, the display. So this is what we have. You can see everything is colliding with each other as well. Nicely. Right. Yeah. So let's just go back. So that's the basic concept. Now let's set up our scene, and then maybe we can add in some materials to our bubbles more. So to add in some materials to our bubble, now if you go to our render view, you can see everything is white. Let's see how we can add in some materials and variations. So I'll click, drag this to bring this up, change this to our shader editor, and then with one bubble selected, I'm just going to select everything like this, and then M to move everything into a new collection, and I'm going to name the collection to bubbles, so that we have everything nicely organized in our scene, right? So with one bubble selected, I just hit on new to create a new material, maybe decrease the roughness a little bit, and then maybe we can play with the transmission, but then later on, once we have everything all set up nicely, right? So you can see some weird thing going on. I think it's because of our collider. Let me just select this. Yeah, let's just hide our collider from our scene as well. Nicely. It's still going to work. So once we have one bubble selected, we are going to create random colors for each of them, but then we're not going to do it manually by giving each of them one color. So we are going to use a cool trick. So let's do Shift A, search, and then we search for object info, right? So once we have the object info, we're going to do Shift A once again, and then we search for a color ramp, right? So let's plug the color here into the base color, and then we are going to use random object info into the factor, right? So once we have this, let's just hit on plus to add in more stops of color into our scene. Then let's change this from linear to constant, right? So that it's just one color. We don't have just a linear gradient, but then we have one color. So now each stop, let's give it a unique color like this. So we give this stop a color, select this, double click, maybe give this a little bit of color like this, do this. So we do the same thing for all of them. Quickly do it. Yeah, give this a little bit of blue. Take your time to find a color scheme that works beautiful for you, right? So once we have this set up, now let's just hold shift click to select everything inside our bubble. Make sure this main one is the active object, and then we can do Control plus L, and then we can link materials, right? So once we link materials, this materials is going to be spread along based on this color ramp. So we can just drag it up like this. To maybe some whites, some nice colors like this. So have our material nicely added to our scene like this. So this is what we're looking for. It's looking nice and beautiful. So let's do Control plus S to save our scene. So now let's see how we can set up our scene. So I'll change this to our solid shading view, bring this down, then change it to our timeline for now. Then let's drag this window to bring it here. This is going to be where we view our camera. So I'll hit on my camera view to bring my camera in place like this, and then maybe scroll this up and then lock our camera to view so that we don't mistakenly change our camera. So once we have our camera set in view, we can just position our camera in place. We are going to animate the camera later on, but let's just position our camera in place, make sure we have all the lighting and everything perfectly. So let's just go to our look dev mode, and then let's just hit on play to play it, our animation, one more time. Right, to make sure we have, let's just play our animation to make sure we have our desired results, what we are looking for. Right, it's going to take some time. I'm not going to pause it or anything, just be a little bit patient, right? So I'm going to pause it here and then bring, so I'll just drag in through it, make sure everything looks nice and the way I want it. I think it looks fine. So we can just position our camera in place, and now let's just check our lighting. So once we have this in place here, let's add in the background and the back. So Shift A, mesh plane, then let's hit on G to bring it back like this, R, Y, 90. Then we can scale it up until it covers our entire background like this, right? So now let's change this to our view like this. This is what we have. Everything is looking nice and beautiful. So you can render with the HDRI if you want. I think it looks nice. It gives us a very nice results here. You can render with the HDRI if you want, or you can add in your own lighting if you want, like a full control over your lighting. So it's all up to you. Let's find what works for you. So let me select this. Let me bring this up a little bit. Go to our shader editor, add in a material, and then maybe let's add in a little tint of bluish color, just to add in some nice color into our scene like that. G to bring this forward a little bit, so we have something like this, right? I think it's looking nice. You can check here to hide everything, and this is what we have. I think it's looking nice and beautiful. So even with the HDRI, we are getting some nice lighting here. Let's go back to our world. Always play with your HDRIs till you find what works best for you, what looks more beautiful for you. But in case you don't want to go with the HDRI too, you can add in your own lights. Let's see if we can do that. So let's just decrease the strength of our HDRI to make sure it's adding in a little bit of color and reflection into our scene. So once we have something like this, let's do Shift A, go to our light, and then let's add in an area light. G, bring it to the side. Then we can rotate it on the x-axis 90 so that it's facing our object. Then scale it up like this, right? So once we have something like this, we can increase our power to 100. 100 is a little bit slow, so let's go with 1000, and then we have this nice lighting and reflection here. I think 1000 is a bit high. Go to it 400. I hope you get the point. Just add in some lights, play with it. The more you play with it, the more you create some cool effect, the more you become more perfect, more expert, the more you get more expertise with it. So add in some light to add in some reflection here. Then maybe adding a last light at the bottom to point it to this side, to add in some lighting here and there, right? So I'll just go back to my world, maybe increase it a little, so that even though we have some lighting and reflections, then decrease my lighting power 200, maybe decrease this one to 100. So though we have some light in our scene, it's not overpowering our main scene. I think this looks nice at every direction. So lastly, maybe you can add in an extra gobo that will shine onto our backdrop to add in a little bit of more detail. So to do that, we are going to use a light. We'll go with a spotlight G, bring it at this side, just bring it to the side. Then we are going to position our spotlight. We are going to let it face our backdrop like this. So the spotlight, its main purpose is just to face the backdrop and then to cast a shadow onto it. So with our spotlight active, let's change this to object, and then let's make sure we have, so inside the light properties of our spotlight, let's just hit on use node to add in an animation shader like this. So once we have the use node active, we can select this, and then we can do Control plus T to add in an image texture to it. So I hit on open. I'm going to add a gobo that you can download to use. So I'm just select gobos and then maybe play with this gobo. Let's increase the strength till we have the gobo affecting here. Maybe this will, no, I think we'll go with this one, right? So once we have the gobo here, I can just bring this here, right? We can increase the radius to make it a little bit softer, like this, and then increase the size of our spot like this, increase the blend like this to add just a little bit of detail at the background, right? So that we have some details at the background like this. So I think everything is looking nice and beautiful. Next, let's see how we can add in one last thing. I promise, just add in some animation and then do our final render. So let's hit Control S to save everything. And then once we have everything set and you have the kind of simulation you want, let's bake in our simulation. So Control S once again to save everything, and then we can go to our scene properties, rigid body world. Then we can add a rigid body world. So once we have add a rigid body world, we can go to simulation, and then let's set the end to, let's say, 120, right? And then we can hit on bake all dynamics to bake our simulation. So let's just hit on bake all dynamics, and then our simulation, we can hit on bake. It's not working. So now my bake is completed. This is what I have so far. Once we hit on play, you can see nice and beautiful. I'm going to limit all my animation to 120. So let's change the end frame from 250 to 120, and then this is what we have. So now let's see how we can add in a secondary camera animation, right? So let's go back to frame 0, and then let's change this to look dev mode so that our animation can render a little bit. We can preview our animation a little bit faster. So once we are here, first let's add in an empty right at the middle. So we can do Shift A, and then we can add in an empty right at the middle. So any empty would do. So I'll add a plain as this, So I'll add this empty and I'll rename it to camera control. Right, so we're going to use this empty to control the camera. So I'll hold shift to select the camera, then hold shift to click on our empty once again. Make sure our empty is the active object, and then we can hit on Control P to parent our camera. So we've parented our camera to the camera control, which is the empty. So if I come here, let me check this, then we have our camera control. Where is it located? I think we did it wrong, so let's just come back. Let's go back a couple of times. So I'm just undoing until I have this now, right? So first let's select our camera here, and then let's hold shift to select our camera control. Make sure hold shift, select our camera control first, and then hold shift to select our camera, right? So now the camera control is the active object. If you take a look at this, you can see that one is, this is in orange, and then there's a light orange. So if you take a look at here, you can see, so this is the active object. Then we can do Control plus P to keep transform. Now we have the camera parented to our camera control, right? So now if we select our camera control, oh my god, very hard to select this. I think this won't be a good empty to use, since it's very hard to select. So let's just go back and then change the empty. So we can go back a couple of times, Control Z, till we have this. So let's just hit on X to delete this empty, then Shift A, let's add in a new empty. So I'm going to use a sphere for now. Yeah, this is a little bit this will be a little bit easier for us to select. We can hide our force field a little bit, so I'll just hide this force field to remove any obstruction, so that we can easily select our empty. So let's just rename it to camera control. Now with it selected, let's select our camera, then let's hold shift and then click on our camera control, and then Control plus P to keep parent the camera to this control, right? So now if you have this control selected, take a look at this side. We can easily rotate it on the y-axis, and then our camera will be rotated, but then it will still be facing our model, right? So let's rotate it to somewhere here, right? So this is where we are going to start our animation. So once we have rotated to somewhere here, let's hit on K, and then let's add in location and then rotation keyframe. So let's hit on it, and then one keyframe will be added right here. Now let's bring our mouse wheel to somewhere here, 200, and then let's rotate it like this, right? And then maybe rotate it on the x-axis, rotate it on the y-axis like this. Feel free to freestyle until you find some animation that works for you. Just feel free to experiment. Rotate it on the z-axis like this, right? So once we have this rotation, you can hit on K, and then we can add in location and rotation once again, right? So now if we hit on play, this is what we have, right? A nice rotation animation like this, right? Then we can add in one extra animation. So let's animate the camera in and out. So it's going to start, so once we are here, it's going to start zoomed in, and then it will zoom out throughout the course of time. So once we have the camera here, we can scroll inside like this, maybe an extra one like this, and then we can hit on K to add in location and rotation here. Then let's bring our camera here, and then we can scroll it out maybe like this, and then we can add in K to add in location and rotation, right? So that we have another secondary animation like this. So it's like a zooming in through the course of time. So let's hit on play. Then this is what we have, right? Nicely done, right? So at this point, let's just go back to our render properties to make sure everything is looking nice. Let's just scroll through to make sure everything is looking nice and beautiful. So once we have everything set, nice and beautiful, maybe we can, let's just change this and see if it works. So let's select one bubble, go to our shader editor, and then let's add in some transmission to see the effect we get, right? Right. So if you want some transmission like this too, if you think it's cool for you, maybe go with it, right? Let me change this to my timeline. Then I'll just scroll through. Let's see, right? I think it looks cool. Yeah, so we go with this. That's fine. And it's looking, I think it looks cool and beautiful. It gives it some kind of unique feel to it. So once everything is all set, maybe we can do our final settings. So we come to our color management, maybe increase the look to, let's say, a high contrast to make everything, the colors and everything, to pop a little bit nice like that, right? Yeah, so everything is looking beautiful. So next, the final thing, I'm going to render this in cycles. So I'll change my max samples from 4000 to 100 so that it can easily render everything as fast as possible for me. And once we do that, we can go to our light path and then change this from 12 to, let's say, 6 to increase our render time a little bit, which yeah, so everything is looking nice and beautiful. So to render this final image, there's two ways of doing it. You can render it directly as a video, or you can render a PNG sequence and then later on compose the sequence in After Effects or DaVinci or any other software you want. So if you want to render a PNG sequence inside your render settings, you have to go to our output. Let's go to our output settings, and then this is where this is the direction, the destination of our rendered file. So we're going to hit on this and then change it to where we have our project file. So I'll come to where we have our project file. I'll hit on new, and then I'll rename it to render, right? Then I'll double click, and then I'm going to render my final file here. So I'll hit on accept, and now you see we have a new file path here, right? So here is where we can select our file format. We want an RGBA. If, let's say, if we wanted to render this as a transparent, then we choose an RGBA. So in this case, we are just going to choose an RGB. Maybe if we had wanted to render a straight up video, then we change this to a FMPEG video like this. Then maybe we can play with the encoding. If everything looks fine, then you can render it. Just hit on render animation, and then it's going to render your video for you. But in case you want to render a PNG sequence, this is how you do it. So usually I'll render a PNG sequence. So the reason you render a PNG sequence is in case at any time, any point in time, Blender crashes on you, you can easily go and continue where you left, right? So I'll set it to PNG sequence, set this to 1, Control S to save my file, make sure everything is nicely saved. Maybe one last thing, let's add in, select this, let's go to our camera. So where we have our camera, let's select our camera, and then let's add in some depth of field. So with my camera, I'll select depth of field, I'll select object, and then I'll make sure I have, so let's make this focus object. Then maybe we can decrease the depth of field a little bit. Let's just scroll in. Yeah, I think this looks better, right? So once we have everything, the depth of field is too much. Let me just decrease it a little bit to f1.4 is fine. So once we have everything active, now all we have to do is to render our final video. So Control S to save, then we'll go to our render, then I'll hit on render animation. So I'm going to pause this. Once my render is done, I'll show you the end results, and then we call this a day. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it up to this point, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It's my friend. So let's hit on render animation. So guys, after a little while, this is my final rendered scene. So as you can see, it starts from frame 1 up to frame 120. So if I pop open the frame 1, this is it, and up to frame 120. So I'll quickly jump into After Effects and then demonstrate how I'll merge all of this into a single image sequence for my final video. So I'm in my After Effects. I'll just hit on new project. Since this is not an After Effects project, After Effects tutorial, I'll just quickly run through it. So I'll just double click this, and then I'll locate where I rendered my final project. So it's here inside the render. So once I'm inside my render, I'll just select one image, and then I'll check on PNG sequence here. And once I do that, I'll just hit on import. Then After Effects is going to import everything, all of them, into a single video. So once I have this, I can just drag and drop this into my composition to create a new composition, and now we have a full rendered video. So if I hit on play, you can see what we have here. Very nice and beautiful. So once you're here, you can add in some effects here and there in case you want this to pop up even more, but we're not going to go into this. So once I have this, I'll quickly add it to my render and then render my final animation. I hope this video was very helpful. Thank you very much for watching up to this end. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and consider supporting me on Patreon. See you on the next one. It's my friend, and peace out.